Tonight on NewsWatch, America's economic outlook. Will President Obama's newest plan really help Americans or just lead to more of the same?
Plus, Snowden on the move. Why the national security leaker may find a refuge in Russia as he runs from the U.S. government.
And one final try. A German homeschool family takes their plea for asylum in America to the U.S. Supreme Court. All this and more tonight on NewsWatch. President Obama says it's back to America's kitchen table as he talks about how we're doing financially as a nation. Good evening. I'm Mark Martin.
And I'm Wendy Griffith. Well, he was sent to Washington to fix America's failing economy. It's one of the issues that has plagued his presidency. And now Mr. Obama is returning his focus to creating jobs. CBN News Washington White House correspondent Jennifer Wishon has our top story tonight.
Despite spending political capital on Obamacare, gun control, and immigration reform, the White House says job creation has always been President Obama's priority one.
It's good to be home in Illinois.
He kicked off his economic refocus tour at Knox College, the place he gave his first major speech as a U.S. Senator. While the economy is stronger than it was when Obama was first elected and the unemployment rate has improved, at 7.6%, it's still high, and lots of Americans are struggling.
But with this endless parade of distractions and political posturing and phony scandals, Washington's taken its eye off the ball.
It's the beginning of an economic tour and offensive against Republicans. Think liberal Tea Party. Organizing for Action, the president's advocacy arm, born out of his campaign machine, is gearing up for activism in August, while members of Congress are on recess.
Hello, OFA!
The president addressed the group in Washington as it planned its strategy. The idea is to engage Mr. Obama's grassroots to promote his policies and gain leverage over Republicans in the midterm elections.
Are you still fired up?
If Republicans feel threatened, they're not letting on. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell says all the president's generating is a collective bipartisan eye roll. Speaker John Boehner calls his efforts a hollow shell.
Well, it's an Easter egg with no candy in it, because Americans aren't asking the question, where are the speeches? They're asking, where are the jobs?
This fall, Congress and the president will have to tackle the budget and debt ceiling, and the expected showdown over taxes and spending threaten to harm the nation's still fragile economy. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, the White House.
Here to discuss the president's comments on the economy is Romina Bacha with the Heritage Foundation. Thanks for joining us, Romina.
Thanks for having me.
The president said Washington needs to shift its focus back on the economy, but he wasn't specific. Where should he and Congress focus?
We have a significant problem in Washington right now, which is that Washington is spending way too much. The public debt doubled under President Obama's watch, and now he and others are trying to focus on the fact that deficits have fallen in 2013, but they're only lower in comparison with the excessive trillion-dollar deficits we had over the past 4 years. Our debt situation has actually gotten much worse, and there's a lot of uncertainty that is holding back business investment and job creation today.
Is the president's outlook clear? I mean, where do we stand with the economy? Talk a little bit more about that.
Unfortunately, we heard the same old economic speech from the president as we've heard for the past 5 years. There weren't really any new ideas in it, so I don't expect to see very much coming out of it. I'm not sure why he's going around the country giving these speeches now when there isn't really any new ideas that would help resolve the issues that we have here in Washington. So I think the American people are looking for leadership from the president on resolving our budget challenges that we're facing right now, and he's not doing that.
Romina, will Congress tackle Obamacare? Will it make or break the economy?
The sequester, for example, they had cried wolf over it. It was going to tank the economy, but now the economy is growing slowly and has shown a great amount of resilience against spending reductions. What we need now is certainty over the long term. Now, what Obamacare does, it actually makes our deficit and debt problem worse over time. It adds about $1.8 trillion in additional spending over the next 10 years, and that comes on a debt that is already projected to be growing at $7 trillion. If you look at it from a household level, already the debt burden is $140,000 per household. We'd be adding about $60,000 on top of that. So it's a tremendous burden that is weighing down the economy, and those are the kind of programs that we need to stop now in expanding, like Obamacare, which would make the problem only worse.
And quickly, what do you think would help create jobs and give more security to American families?
Really, there have been a lot of policies that have created a lot of uncertainty. Obamacare is still being phased in, and there are a lot of problems with the law we already know that are harming workers, that are harming businesses. Same with the Dodd-Frank financial regulation. On top of that, you have all this additional massive spending, and the president wanting to do more of that from the government side. I think what we need to do is pare back a lot of these regulations, a lot of the spending that is causing so much harm over the long term, especially, so that we can have a robust economy for the private sector to create jobs that will allow the American people to have more prosperity.
All right, Romina Bacha with the Heritage Foundation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Kentucky Senator Rand Paul says churches in America should challenge the IRS by speaking boldly from the pulpit without worrying about the consequences. In an exclusive interview with CBN's David Brody, Paul issued this challenge to pastors.
What I would say to the churches is be bold and challenge them and say, in our church, we're still going to discuss good and evil and what we think of it, and so be it if the government wants to come and challenge us, because if we don't stand up and try to protect our God-given rights, they're going to be taken from us.
Many pastors are reluctant to speak out on political issues because they fear being audited or fined by the IRS.
The NSA agent behind the massive surveillance leak is still stuck in Russia. Reports suggested that Edward Snowden had been given documents that would have allowed him to leave the transit lounge of Moscow's main international airport. He applied for temporary asylum in Russia last week, but his lawyer says more paperwork needs to be done on his application before he can leave. Snowden is wanted in the United States for leaking highly classified national security information to reporters.
Well, you may not know this, but a majority of all new cars sold in America have so-called black boxes. They store critical information about the performance of the car. They also give federal regulators, police, and insurance companies access to other data to investigate crashes. And if the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has its way, all cars will have them by next year. But critics worry the black box data is just another example of the government having too much access to America's private information.
Some good news following a natural gas well blowout off the Louisiana coast. Investigators say they see no sheen on the water, which means it's not leaking into the ocean. More than 40 workers were forced to evacuate Tuesday. No injuries were reported in Tuesday night's fire. It's also not expected to be nearly as damaging as the 2010 BP oil spill. The cause is under investigation. The city of Detroit is defending its right to file for bankruptcy in federal court today. Lawyers for the city are seeking to block a series of lawsuits so the city can slash its crippling debts. But former city employees say they're owed pensions, and they claim the bankruptcy filing violates the state's constitution. Ephraim Graham has the story.
It's a battle that will determine whether the city of Detroit is obligated to its past, or if it can start fresh and have a chance at a future. At the heart of the issue, pensions. Detroit promised the benefits to thousands of retirees, but the money to pay up isn't there. Bill Frezza from the Competitive Enterprise Institute says pension reform is a necessity if Detroit is going to recover.
It's going to be painful for a lot of people, but continuing to kick the can and deny reality can only lead Detroit towards what we're seeing in Greece.
But city workers, retirees, and pensioners are suing. They claim filing for bankruptcy violates the state constitution, which guarantees pension benefits will be paid in full. Last week, a Michigan Circuit Court judge sided with the pensioners.
There's been a violation of the Constitution, and I don't think the Constitution should be made to be Swiss cheese. Once we erode it with one hole, there will be others.
Now the federal court is weighing in. U.S. bankruptcy judge Stephen Rhodes will consider Detroit's request to put on hold all lawsuits filed against the city before it filed for bankruptcy. The legal question at the heart of Detroit's bankruptcy filing has never been answered in the nation's high courts. But this case could be crucial, considering how many other cities are heading in the same direction. Frezza says for many of those cities, it's already too late.
If you look at the dollars in the operating budget that are going to legacy costs in so many of these cities, there's no way to turn them around. And so they might be able to slow things down, but there's got to be a reckoning, and both municipal bondholders and pensioners have to take a haircut.
For now, all eyes are on Detroit, as it's decided just how far the U.S. bankruptcy code goes and whether it trumps state law.
Thanks, Ephraim. Well, commissioners in Rowan County, North Carolina, can't open their meetings with a prayer to Jesus Christ. A federal judge issued a preliminary injunction barring the prayers in response to an ACLU lawsuit. The suit filed on behalf of 3 county residents claims that opening a government meeting with the prayers of just one faith violates the Constitution. Rowan County commissioners are seeking legal advice before responding. A federal judge is putting a key part of an Alabama abortion law on hold until next year. The law tightens restrictions on abortion providers, and opponents say it will force the closing of more than half of the state's abortion clinics. It was set to go into effect August 15th, but U.S. District Judge Myron Thompson issued an order delaying enforcement until March 24th of next year. That gives the court time to move forward with a lawsuit filed by Planned Parenthood and the American Civil Liberties Union. A milestone he'd rather not celebrate for imprisoned American pastor Saeed Abedini.
Also, the latest on his condition from Iran when we come back. And coming up, the next move for a German family fighting to stay in America and the right to homeschool their children.
Attorneys for a Christian couple that fled Germany to homeschool their children are taking their case to the U.S. Supreme Court. In Germany, parents who homeschool are hounded, fined, and sometimes even jailed. But as CBN News has reported, the Obama administration says that's not enough reason to grant political asylum to the Romeike family. CBN's Dale Hurd has their story.
The appeals court upheld the Obama administration's refusal of asylum to the Romeike family. The Romeikas fled Germany in 2008 facing criminal prosecution for homeschooling. They live in Tennessee. In 2010, they were granted political asylum by an immigration judge. But that decision was overturned by the Board of Immigration Appeals last year. Uwe and Hannelore Romeike began homeschooling in Germany because they didn't want their children exposed to things like witchcraft and graphic sex education that are taught in German schools.
Also, there were stories where they were encouraged to ask the devil for help instead of God, and actually the devil would help.
We found out what is in the textbooks. It's exactly the opposite from what the Bible tells us and teaches us, and we wanted to protect them.
While the appeals court acknowledged that the U.S. Constitution recognizes the rights of parents to homeschool, it refused to grant that what German homeschoolers face amounts to persecution deserving of asylum. Michael Ferris of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, which represented the Romeikas, said, "We believe the Sixth Circuit is wrong and we will appeal their decision." The Romeikas told CBN News they're disappointed, but said God is in control. They know what they face in Germany if they're deported.
First, they would fine us with increasingly high fines, and they would threaten us to take away custody. There might be jail time too. But the main threat, I think, is the aspect of custody, because then, of course, the children are taken away from you completely, and I mean, that's what no family wants, right?
Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Does Jerusalem belong to Israel? The U.S. government refuses to take a stand on the issue, and now a federal appeals court is backing up that policy. A 3-judge panel struck down a law allowing U.S. citizens born in Jerusalem to list Israel as their place of birth on passports. The court said the law interferes with the president's authority to recognize foreign governments. U.S. policy says the city's status should be resolved between the Palestinians and the Israelis. Israeli leaders and many Christians say Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel. After more than 300 days in jail and being tortured for his faith, American pastor Saeed Abedini finally receives medical treatment. The 33-year-old Abedini was taken to a private hospital Saturday where he was examined and prescribed medication. He was convicted and sentenced to 8 years in Iran's brutal Evin prison just because he's a Christian. The American Center for Law and Justice, which represents Abedini's wife and children, says she is thankful for the prayers and support for her husband's release.
Up next, behind the excitement of the Pope's Rio visit, stark realities for an impoverished nation and what Christians are doing to make a difference there.
From CBN.
Broken Eardrum is playing at the Civic tonight.
And you'll just have to miss it.
This is so incredibly unfair.
A special story of love and sacrifice.
Joy, Mom comes up with something.
Christopher Quantum, you and I are going to discuss your attitude right this minute. Superbook.
No.
Join the Superbook DVD Club and get Superbook's newest episode, He is Risen. Plus 2 copies to share with others. All for your gift of $25.
They have arrested Jesus, the Messiah. Do you not know that I have the power to crucify you?
No! Please! You can't! They've taken him to Golgotha. We must hurry. Mary is about to lose her son. The worst thing any mother could face. I am not leaving her.
Superbook. It's an amazing way to build a strong spiritual foundation in the children you love.
Mary, who are you looking for?
I've seen him! He is alive!
Superbook. He is Risen. Available now.
Well, Pope Francis is making his rounds in Brazil today to rally the nation's Catholics. But he has faced protests from some who are angry the country is spending millions of dollars for his visit. Poverty is a huge problem in Brazil.
Yeah, more than 11 million people live in gang and drug-filled slums there. American missionary Eric Rees spends his days among them, bringing light to one of the darkest areas of Rio de Janeiro. Stan Jeter reports.
What makes me love Rio is just seeing the hurting people in the communities like this. Just trying to survive, just trying to pay the bills, just trying to put food on their table. I see that every person here is a creation of God, and that when Christ went to the cross, he went to the cross for these people too.
This is where Eric Rees works. He thinks often of the danger, knowing he might go out one day and not come back.
And I wrote a letter to my wife. If I don't return, you be strong. Let my girls know that's gonna miss them.
Ministry in the favelas is hard, even for the Brazilians.
It's hard because the Christian people here in Brazil, and I think in other countries, don't want to do this kind of job. They want to go to the streets at night to speak the word of God, to preach the word of God. They don't want. They want to stay in their big church, just watch a good sermon.
Yet the American couple continues reaching out to drug dealers, gang members, and prostitutes. Ramona Rees believes their own background helps them relate.
From the beginning, the way in which we grew up, to bring us to do what we're doing. It's not so hard for us to understand the people that we're ministering to. And so it's just trying to minister to somebody who needs Jesus, who just so happens to be a drug trafficker or, a militia or whatever.
Rees and his family came to Brazil 13 years ago as Southern Baptist missionaries from Albany, Georgia. His greatest challenge? Gaining the confidence of a top favela gang leader, the Godfather. One night, the man agreed to an interview in a secret location. The godfather who originally wanted to kill Reese now spoke well of the missionary.
He was a person who came to the community and helped the community, which has many needs, financial needs. He didn't come to help with the financial needs, but to bring the peace that many need.
Shortly after the interview, a rival gang assassinated the godfather, but not before he put his faith in Jesus Christ.
I will not hold back into a comfort zone from my comfort level. Shorten the hand of Christ, shorten the hand of God. When people are dying, going to hell, needing to know there's a way their life can be changed and changed radically, I will not do it.
Reese now finds help from a Brazilian pastor with a favela background.
I tried to steal a car. When I looked behind, there was a police car. They started shooting at us, and one of these shots got me here. My mother had always told me that even if it were the last minute of my life, if I repented, God would forgive me of my sins. And that time had come. I started a new life with Jesus.
The grace of God has brought that guy not from near death, shootings, to now a beautiful family, a lovely wife, awesome kids. Only the grace of God could do that.
Ramona Reese supports her husband in ministry. She befriends other women, including Vivian, a single mother and former prostitute.
When that relationship has been established and the Holy Spirit does his work and that person receives Christ, and I can actually see them being baptized and seeing them joining a church, that's the greatest. That's the biggest reward.
And as the Reeses deal with the daily challenges of work in the favelas, people like Vivian remind them why they came in the first place. Stan Jeter, CBN News.
The most talked about baby in the world has a name. The new British royal prince was born Monday, but his parents made his name official today.
And I know what it is.
Tell us. We all want to know.
All right. Okay. Well, Prince William and his wife Kate will call their son George Alexander Louis. I like it.
Yeah, very distinguished.
George is the third in line to the throne and will be formally known as His Royal Highness Prince George of Cambridge. He's been busy since his birth. Today, he met his great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. Then Will and Kate brought him to Kate's parents' home in their village near London. The royal couple gave the public a sneak peek at baby George yesterday, but no formal photos yet. You just see the top of his head right there, and he does have a very pretty head, I must say. But
we'll see more later.
We hope so. Yeah, we'll definitely keep you posted. Thanks so much for watching.
Yeah, have a good night.
Good night.